The cold was sharper than usual that morning, and the forest seemed empty and silent, except for the sound of snow crunching underfoot. The hunter wrapped his thick coat tighter around his body and pulled the worn hat lower over his forehead. His breath came out in small white clouds and mixed with the mist that hung low over the frozen ground. Each step was slow and careful, because the snow was deep and uneven, hiding roots and stones that could make him fall. The hunter knew this land well, but the winter made everything more dangerous. He carried his old rifle over his shoulder and the leather strap pressed into his shoulder. He had been hunting since dawn and hoped to find something to bring home. The deer tracks had been clear earlier, and he had followed them with care. The forest was quiet, and the cold air made his senses sharper. He noticed the smallest sounds, the rustle of a branch, the soft tapping of ice falling from a tree, the distant call of a bird. He was alert but calm, moving through the snow with practiced ease. Hours passed, and he followed the tracks further than usual. The snow became deeper and the trees more crowded together. Every now and then, he paused to listen. He could hear the wind moving through the trees like a soft sigh. His eyes scanned the shadows, looking for movement. He knew that animals were clever in the snow and could sense humans from far away. As he moved carefully over a small hill, he noticed something unusual. The tracks in the snow were not from a deer. They were smaller, lighter, and looked human. He stopped and studied them. The snow had partially covered them, but he could see the outline clearly. Someone had passed this way recently. The hunter felt a small chill run down his spine. Not from the cold, but from the thought that someone might be out here alone in the winter. He followed the tracks slowly, stepping carefully so as not to disturb them too much. The trees grew closer together and the light became dimmer. The hunter could see his own breath and hear the soft crunch of his boots in the snow. The tracks led him to a small clearing where the snow had been disturbed, as if someone had fallen. There were small marks in the snow, and the hunter realized that whoever had been here was struggling to move. The forest was very quiet now. The hunter felt a growing sense of urgency. He knew that in this weather anyone caught outside could not survive for long. He looked around and saw a faint movement near a cluster of trees. At first, he thought it might be an animal, but then he saw a figure lying in the snow. The hunter ran carefully to the figure, calling softly to make sure it was alive. When he reached the figure, he could see it was a woman. She was lying on her side, her body shaking from the cold. Her clothes were thin and wet from the snow. Her hair was tangled and covered in frost. The hunter felt a surge of concern and gently shook her shoulder. She did not respond at first. He checked her pulse and felt it weak, but steady. He looked around for anything to help her. The snow was deep, and the trees offered little shelter. He decided to carry her to a nearby fallen tree that could offer some protection from the wind. Lifting her carefully, he felt the weight of her body and realized how cold she must be. Her hands were numb, and her lips blue. He wrapped his coat around her as best he could and moved slowly toward the tree. Once they reached the fallen tree, laid her down gently and tried to make her more comfortable. He brushed the snow from her hair and face and checked her again. Her breathing was slow, but she was still alive. The hunter knew he had to keep her warm until she could move or until he could get her help. He started a small fire using dry twigs and branches he found nearby. The smoke rose into the cold air. The warmth from the fire touched their frozen faces. The woman stirred slightly, her eyes opening slowly. She looked confused and frightened. The hunter spoke softly to her, telling her it was okay and that she was safe. She tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. The hunter realized she must have been out in the cold for hours, or maybe even longer. He gave her some water from his flask, but offered her a small piece of food. She accepted it weakly and nodded. The hunter could see the fear in her eyes, but also a small spark of trust. He stayed with her, keeping her warm and watching her closely. The forest was still quiet, except for the soft crackling of the fire. As the sun began to rise higher, the light changed the forest. Shadows shortened, and the snow sparkled in the morning light. The hunter felt a sense of relief that he had found her in time. He knew the next hours would be difficult, but for now they were safe from the worst of the cold. He spoke to her again, asking simple questions and trying to keep her alert. She responded with small gestures and weak words, but it was enough to show that she was regaining some strength. The hunter felt a bond forming between them, born from the struggle to survive. He knew he would do everything he could to help her. The day was beginning, and the hunter made a plan. They could not stay in the clearing for long. The snow would only get colder and the wind stronger. He decided to move slowly toward a place he knew where they could find better shelter. He lifted her carefully again, feeling the chill of her body against his own. The forest was vast and empty, but he moved with determination. Every step was a test of endurance. The snow made it difficult to walk, and the hunter had to balance carrying her with navigating the uneven ground. He paused often, letting her rest and keeping the fire smoldering as much as possible. Her breathing was slow but steady, and he could see that the warmth of the coat and the fire were helping as they moved through the forest. The hunter could hear the sounds of winter more clearly. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying distant sounds of breaking ice and falling snow. The hunter felt a mixture of exhaustion and alertness. He knew they were not out of danger yet, but he also knew that every step brought them closer to safety. The woman began to lean slightly against him, her trust in him growing with every small gesture. The hunter felt a sense of responsibility that went beyond anything he had experienced before. He was not just hunting now, he was protecting life in its most fragile form. They continued slowly, stopping to rest when the snow became too deep. The hunter talked to her in quiet tones, telling her what he was doing and asking her to stay awake. She responded with soft murmurs and small nods. The forest seemed less threatening with their small fire and the human connection between them. Hours passed and the sun moved higher in the sky. The hunter could see a distant ridge that meant they were moving in the right direction. He knew that if they could reach that ridge, they would find a place sheltered from the wind where they could rest more safely. He encouraged the woman, speaking gently and reassuringly. She nodded and made the effort to move with him as the first part of their journey ended. The hunter felt a mixture of hope and caution. The cold was still a danger, but they had survived the first encounter with the harsh winter. The woman was alive and had begun to trust him, and that trust would be important in the next steps of their journey. The forest was still vast and silent, but for now they had a small place of warmth and safety. The hunter looked ahead and knew that the struggle was only beginning, but he felt ready to face it. The bond between them had begun to form, fragile but strong enough to give both hope. The hunter stayed alert and watchful, knowing that the cold winter forest could be unforgiving, but also feeling a sense of purpose that drove him forward. The hunter carefully lifted the woman and started moving toward the ridge he had seen earlier. Each step was heavy in the deep snow, and the cold air made it hard to breathe. The woman leaned against him, her body weak and trembling. He could feel how exhausted she was, and he tried to move slowly to make it easier for her. The forest was quiet, except for the sound of their boots in the snow and the soft creaking of the trees as the wind moved through them. He looked around as they moved, scanning the trees for any signs of danger or obstacles. The snow was deep in some places, and he had to find a path that was safe for both of them. He spoke softly to the woman, telling her to stay with him and keep her eyes open. She tried to respond, but her words were barely audible. Her lips were blue from the cold, and he could see frost forming on the ends of her hair. He knew that if they stopped for too long, the cold could take a serious toll on her body after some time. They reached a small clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. The wind was slightly less strong here, and the hunter decided to rest for a while. He laid her down gently on a thick patch of snow that he tried to clear as much as possible. He wrapped his coat around her and took out a small blanket he always carried. Covering her as best he could, he sat close by to keep watch. He built a small fire from dry branches and pine needles he had gathered along the way. The fire was not large, but it was enough to provide warmth. The smoke rose into the sky, and the flames danced in the cold air. The woman stirred slightly, her eyes opening and closing slowly. She looked around, confused, and the hunter spoke gently, telling her that she was safe and that he would not let anything happen to her. She tried to speak again, but only a weak sound came out. The hunter gave her some water from his flask and offered a small piece of food he had packed. She took it slowly, her hands shaking as she held it. He watched carefully as she ate, making sure she did not choke or drop it. The cold made everything harder, even small movements. He thought about how long she must have been out in the forest alone and how dangerous it had been. The thought made him more determined to get her to safety. He asked her simple questions, speaking slowly and clearly. She answered with small nods and weak words. The hunter noticed the fear in her eyes, but also a small spark of trust. He continued to reassure her, telling her that they would reach a place where she could rest properly. The trust was fragile, but important, and he knew he had to protect Eat after some rest. He decided they needed to move again. The ridge was still some distance away, and the cold could get worse as the sun went down. He helped the woman to her feet and supported her as they walked. Each step was difficult, the snow deep and slippery. He made sure she did not fall and encouraged her to keep moving. She leaned on him, relying on his strength and guidance. The forest felt less threatening when they were together as they moved. The hunter noticed small signs of the woman's condition improving. She could take short steps without needing as much support. Her breathing became steadier, and she began to respond to him more clearly. He encouraged her, speaking softly and telling her how well she was doing. The forest around them was still cold and harsh, but the small progress gave them hope. They reached a narrow path between two hills, where the snow was slightly shallower. The hunter knew this path would lead closer to the ridge. He moved carefully, guiding the woman along. The wind was strong here, but the trees provided some shelter. He held his coat around her as best he could to protect her from the gusts. She shivered less than before and began to show signs of regaining some energy. The hunter kept talking to her, telling small stories about the forest, the animals, and the paths he had taken before. His voice was calm and steady, giving her something familiar to focus on. She listened quietly, her eyes tracking him as he moved. The connection between them grew stronger with each step. The hunter realized that even in this harsh environment, human connection could give strength and hope of walking for what felt like hours. They reached a small stream partially covered by ice. The water ran quietly under the ice, and the hunter stopped to give her a moment to rest. He let her drink some cold water and watched her carefully. Her hands were less numb, and her cheeks had a faint color. The small progress made him feel relief. But he knew the journey was not over. They continued along the stream, using it as a guide. The forest around them began to change slightly, the trees less dense, and the snow not as deep. The hunter felt they were moving in the right direction. He kept checking on her, supporting her when she stumbled and speaking softly to keep her calm. She leaned on him more willingly now, trusting his guidance, as they approached a bend in the stream. The hunter noticed a small cluster of rocks that could serve as a temporary shelter. He decided to stop there for a longer rest. He cleared the snow from a flat area and helped the woman sit down. He built another small fire and made sure the smoke would rise to signal that someone was there if anyone came looking. She ate a little more food and drank some water. The warmth of the fire and the food seemed to help her strength. The hunter sat close by, watching her carefully. He could see that she was regaining some energy, and that her body was responding to warmth and nourishment. He spoke softly, encouraging her and praising her effort. She gave him a small smile, the first he had seen since finding her. It was a small but powerful sign that she was starting to trust him as the sun began to move lower in the sky. The hunter realized that they needed to find more permanent shelter soon. The cold would intensify as night came and the forest could be dangerous. He spoke to her, explaining that they would have to move carefully to reach a better place before it got dark. She nodded, showing understanding and willingness to continue. He helped her to her feet again, supporting her as they moved. Each step was slow but steady. The forest seemed less intimidating with the fire behind them, and the hunter guiding her. He spoke quietly, telling her to focus on him and the path ahead. She followed, her trust growing with each step. They came across a small hill that would lead them closer to the ridge. The snow here was deep, but the hunter found a path that would make it easier for her. He held her close, lifting her slightly when necessary, and encouraged her to keep moving. The wind was biting, but the warmth of their shared effort and the small fire in the distance kept them going. Hours passed. They reached the base of the ridge. The slope was steep and covered in snow, but the hunter knew that once they climbed it, they would find a place sheltered from the wind. He helped her up the slope, step by step, his own muscles aching from the effort. She leaned on him, trusting him completely. Now at the top of the ridge, they found a small clearing protected by trees. The hunter set her down gently and built another small fire. He wrapped her in his coat and the blanket again, making sure she was as warm as possible. She sat close to the fire, her body relaxing slightly. The hunter felt relief, but remained vigilant. Knowing the cold could still be dangerous, they stayed by the fire, resting and recovering. The woman began to speak in small words, telling him fragments of her story. He listened carefully, offering comfort and reassurance. The connection between them grew stronger as they shared these quiet moments. The forest, though still harsh, seemed a little less threatening now night approached, and the hunter prepared for the coldest hours. He made sure the fire was safe, but would continue to provide warmth. He spoke to the woman, telling her to stay close and rest. She leaned on him, her trust complete. The bond between them had grown, forged through struggle and care. The hunter felt a deep sense of responsibility and determination to keep her safe as they sat by the fire. The hunter reflected on the journey so far. The cold had been unforgiving, but they had survived together. The woman had begun to regain her strength and trust, and he knew that each step forward brought them closer to safety. The forest was still vast and full of challenges, but their connection gave them hope. The hunter stayed alert, ready for whatever the night would bring. Knowing that they were not alone anymore, the night was cold and long, but the small fire kept them warm enough to survive. The hunter stayed awake, watching the woman sleep lightly beside him. He could hear the wind moving through the trees and the occasional creak of branches under the weight of snow. He thought about how fragile life could be in these conditions, and how lucky they were to have found each other as the night went on. The woman stirred occasionally, shifting slightly to get warmer. The hunter adjusted his coat and blanket around her, making sure she stayed protected from the cold. He spoke softly, telling her it was safe and that he was there. She responded with a small murmur and squeezed his hand briefly. That small gesture gave him hope and reminded him of why he had to keep going when the first light of dawn touched the forest. The hunter helped her sit up. Her eyes were tired but more alert than before. He gave her a little food and water, and she ate slowly, showing signs of improvement. The forest around them was quiet and covered in fresh snow from the night. The sun reflected off the icy surfaces, creating a blinding glow. But the warmth of the light made moving easier. They had to continue toward a safer place. And the hunter knew the forest would become more challenging as the day went on. He helped the woman to her feet and guided her along the ridge. Each step required careful balance, and he kept her close to avoid any falls. The snow was slippery and deep in places, making the journey slow and exhausting as they moved. The hunter talked to her about small things to keep her calm and focused. He told her stories of the animals that lived in the forest and the paths he had taken before. She listened quietly, occasionally asking a question or nodding. Her voice was weak, but it showed her growing trust in him. The bond between them grew stronger with every step. Connection formed in the shared struggle for survival. They came across a frozen stream that cut through the forest. The hunter led her carefully along the edge, avoiding weak ice. The sound of water running under the ice was faint but clear, and it reminded him that life continued even in this harsh environment. He offered her a sip of water, and she drank carefully, smiling slightly as the cold liquid refreshed her. The journey continued, and the hunter noticed small signs that the woman was regaining strength. She could move a little faster and respond to him more clearly. He encouraged her, praising her effort and reminding her how far they had come. She nodded and leaned on him more willingly, showing that she trusted his guidance completely. After some time, they reached a small hill that provided a better view of the surrounding forest. The hunter scanned the area for a safe path and spotted a small clearing below that looked sheltered from the wind. He led the woman down carefully, making sure each step was steady. The forest seemed less threatening when he guided her, and she followed without hesitation. In the clearing, he found dry branches and small logs to build another fire. The warmth was immediate, and he wrapped her in his coat and blanket again. He checked her hands and feet, rubbing them gently to restore circulation. She leaned against him, showing trust and gratitude. The hunter felt a deep sense of responsibility and determination to keep her safe as they rested. The woman began to speak in small phrases, telling fragments of her story. She explained how she had become lost in the forest and how she had tried to survive on her own. The hunter listened carefully, offering comfort and reassurance. The exchange brought them closer, and he realized that understanding her situation helped him care for her better. The forest around them remained harsh, but the small fire and the bond between them provided warmth and hope. The hunter thought about the challenges ahead and prepared for the next part of their journey. He gathered supplies, making sure they had enough food and water for the day. He checked the fire to ensure it would last while they moved once they were ready. He helped the woman to her feet and guided her toward a small slope leading further into the forest. The snow was deep and the path was uneven, but they moved carefully together. Each step was slow but steady, and the hunter encouraged her to keep going, praising her determination as they climbed higher. The forest opened up slightly, allowing more light to filter through. The snow sparkled in the sunlight, and the hunter felt a small sense of relief. The terrain was still difficult, but the path was clearer, and the woman showed signs of growing strength. Her breathing was steadier. She could walk a little more confidently. They stopped occasionally to rest, and the hunter made sure she ate and drank whenever possible. He spoke softly, telling her that they were making progress and that each step brought them closer to safety. She responded with nods and small words, showing her trust and growing confidence. The journey continued through dense trees and over frozen streams. The hunter guided her carefully, making sure she avoided weak ice and hidden obstacles. The woman leaned on him for support, and he felt the weight of responsibility for her safety. Each step required focus and care, but he remained determined to get her to a secure place as the day went on. They reached a series of rocks and fallen logs that provided temporary shelter. The hunter built another small fire and helped her sit close to the warmth. He wrapped her in his coat and blanket again, making sure she stayed protected from the cold. The woman rested quietly, showing signs of recovery and trust. The hunter spoke to her gently, asking about her journey and listening carefully to her words. She shared fragments of her experiences, and he offered understanding and encouragement. The conversation strengthened their bond, creating a sense of companionship in the harsh forest environment. After resting, they continued toward a more permanent shelter. The hunter led the way, guiding her through deep snow and uneven terrain. The woman followed, leaning on him when necessary and trusting his guidance completely. The forest remained cold and challenging, but their determination and connection kept them moving forward as they approached a small ridge. The hunter found a place that could provide better shelter for the night. The slope was steep, but the area at the top was flat and protected by trees. He helped her climb carefully, step by step, making sure she did not slip. She leaned on him, showing complete trust and reliance at the top of the ridge. They found a small clearing with enough space to build a more secure fire. The hunter gathered dry branches and constructed a larger fire to provide warmth for the night. He wrapped the woman in his coat and blanket, ensuring she was as comfortable as possible. She sat close to the fire, resting and regaining strength. The hunter stayed alert, watching the surrounding forest for any signs of danger. The wind blew through the trees, but the fire and their bond provided warmth and protection. He spoke to her softly, telling her to rest and regain her energy. She leaned on him, her trust complete, and for the first time since he found her, he felt a sense of relief. They stayed by the fire for the rest of the day, eating small amounts of food and drinking water. The woman began to speak more clearly, sharing more of her story and experiences. The hunter listened patiently, offering comfort and reassurance. The connection between them deepened, built on trust, care, and shared survival. As the sun began to set, the hunter prepared for the cold night ahead. He made sure the fire was safe, but would continue to provide warmth. He spoke to the woman, telling her to stay close and rest. She leaned against him, her trust complete. The bond between them had grown stronger, forged through struggle and care. The hunter felt a deep sense of responsibility and determination to keep her safe. The night fell over the forest, now bringing cold and darkness. The hunter stayed awake, watching the woman sleep lightly. The fire provided warmth and light, and he thought about the journey they had taken together so far. The woman had regained some strength and trust, and he knew that the next steps of their journey would be challenging but possible. The forest was harsh, but their connection gave them hope and courage to continue. Hunter woke early to the sound of the wind moving through the trees. The woman was still sleeping lightly beside the fire. The night had been cold, but they had survived, and he felt a small sense of relief. He checked the fire to make sure it had not gone out, and added small branches to keep it burning. The warmth was necessary to help the woman regain her strength. He gently shook her shoulder to wake her. She opened her eyes slowly and looked around, confused at first, but then focusing on him. He spoke softly, telling her that it was time to move, and that they needed to continue toward a safer place. She nodded slightly, understanding the urgency. The hunter helped her sit up and gave her a little food and water. She ate slowly but steadily, showing signs of strength returning. They left the clearing and continued along the ridge. The snow was deep and the wind strong, but the forest seemed slightly less threatening in the daylight. The hunter guided her carefully, helping her navigate the slippery slopes and uneven ground. He made sure she was balanced and supported, and she leaned on him willingly. Trusting his guidance completely as they moved, the hunter noticed small signs of improvement in her condition. She could lift her feet higher to step over obstacles, and her breathing was steadier. He praised her for the effort, speaking softly to encourage her. She responded with small words and gestures, showing that she felt supported and understood. The bond between them grew stronger with each step. They came across a frozen creek that they needed to cross. The ice was thin in some places, and the hunter tested each step carefully. He helped the woman over the creek, supporting her and making sure she did not slip. The cold water beneath the ice reminded them of the danger around them. They both moved cautiously and reached the other side safely. The small victory gave them both confidence. The forest around them became denser, and the snow covered the ground in thick layers. The hunter led the way, breaking the trail through the snow. He watched the woman carefully as she followed, making sure she did not struggle too much. The effort required focus and patience, but they moved steadily toward a small hill he had seen from the ridge earlier. When they reached the base of the hill, the hunter decided to rest for a short time. He cleared a flat area of snow and built a small fire. He wrapped the woman in his coat and blanket, making sure she was protected from the cold. She sat close to the fire, her hands reaching out to feel the warmth. He watched her carefully. Making sure she was comfortable and safe, the woman began to speak more clearly, telling him small fragments of her journey. She spoke of how she had become lost and what she had done to survive. The hunter listened patiently, offering understanding and encouragement. The shared words created a deeper bond, helping both of them feel less alone in the harsh forest. After a short rest, they continued up the hill. The snow was deep and heavy, and the slope was steep. The hunter helped her climb step by step, supporting her and offering encouragement. She leaned on him, trusting his guidance completely. The effort was exhausting, but they made progress steadily. The forest around them was quiet, and the only sounds were their boots in the snow and the soft rustling of the wind. They reached a small plateau at the top of the hill. The hunter scanned the area and found a sheltered spot protected by rocks and trees. He decided this would be a good place to build a larger fire and rest for the night. He helped the woman sit down and wrapped her in his coat and blanket. The warmth of the fire brought a small smile to her face, a sign of relief and trust. The hunter gathered dry branches and constructed a larger fire. He spoke softly, telling the woman that they would stay here until it was safe to continue. She listened quietly, leaning close to the warmth. The bond between them grew stronger in the shared silence. The hunter felt a deep sense of responsibility and determination to keep her safe as the day progressed. The hunter and the woman explored the surrounding area slightly to find better shelter. They discovered a small overhang of rocks that could provide protection from the wind. The hunter made it as comfortable as possible, moving snow and arranging branches to create a small resting area. The woman watched him carefully, her trust growing with each thoughtful action. They spent the rest of the day resting by the fire. The hunter spoke to her gently, telling small stories about the forest and the animals that lived there. She listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or sharing small thoughts. The interaction brought comfort to both, making the forest feel less harsh and threatening. As the sun began to set, the hunter prepared for the cold night. He ensured the fire would last and wrapped the woman securely in his coat and blanket. She sat close to him, feeling the warmth and protection. The hunter stayed alert, watching the forest for any signs of danger. The night promised to be cold, but they were prepared. The woman rested quietly, showing signs of recovery. She could move more easily and speak more clearly. The hunter encouraged her, praising the small improvements and telling her that she was doing well. Her confidence grew with his support, and the bond between them became stronger during the evening. The hunter spoke softly to her about what lay ahead. He explained the path they would take and the challenges they might face. She listened attentively, nodding in understanding. The clarity of communication helped both of them feel more prepared for the journey ahead. The wind blew through the trees, but the fire provided warmth and light. The woman leaned against the hunter, feeling safe in his presence. The forest was still cold and challenging, but their connection gave them strength. They were no longer alone in the wilderness. As night fell completely, the hunter stayed awake, while the woman slept lightly. He watched the fire and listened to the sounds of the forest, ready to act if necessary. The experience of the past days had brought them closer, creating trust and understanding that was essential for survival. The night passed slowly, with the wind blowing and the fire burning steadily. The hunter felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. They had survived another day and night in the harsh forest. The woman had regained strength and trust, and the bond between them had grown stronger. As dawn approached, the hunter gently woke the woman. She opened her eyes slowly and looked around, taking in the light of the early morning. He spoke softly, telling her it was time to move. She nodded, understanding the need to continue. He helped her to her feet and offered a little food and water. They left the sheltered spot and continued along the ridge. The snow was still deep, but the path ahead was clearer. The hunter guided the woman carefully, supporting her when needed and encouraging her to keep moving. The bond between them gave them both strength and hope. They encountered small obstacles along the way, including frozen streams and uneven ground. The hunter guided her carefully, ensuring she did not fall or struggle unnecessarily. Each challenge they faced together strengthened their connection and mutual trust. The day passed as they moved through the forest, making steady progress. The woman regained more strength and was able to walk with less support. The hunter praised her effort and encouraged her to keep going. The forest remained cold and quiet, but they were determined to reach safety. As evening approached, they found a small clearing with dry branches and logs. The hunter built another fire and helped the woman sit close, wrapping her in his coat and blanket. They rested quietly, the bond between them deepening with each passing moment. The forest was still harsh, but the warmth of the fire and their connection provided comfort. The hunter stayed alert as night fell, watching over the woman. The wind blew through the trees, but they were prepared. The woman slept lightly, trusting the hunter completely. The experience of survival had brought them together, creating a bond that gave both hope and courage for the challenges ahead. Morning light broke through the trees, and the forest seemed softer than it had in days. The hunter helped the woman to her feet and gave her a small amount of food and water. She ate slowly, but with more energy than before. Her hands were less numb, and the color had returned to her cheeks. The hunter felt a small sense of relief. Seeing her strength gradually return, they left the clearing and followed a path through the forest. The snow was still deep, but the sun provided warmth and light. The hunter moved carefully, guiding the woman along uneven ground and frozen streams. Each step required balance and attention, but she followed willingly, trusting his guidance. Their bond had grown strong over the past days, giving them both courage as they moved. The hunter talked softly, telling stories of the forest and the animals that lived there. She listened attentively, occasionally responding with questions or small comments. The conversation was comforting, making the forest seem less threatening. He encouraged her to speak about her journey. She shared small fragments of her story. Her trust in him growing, they encountered a small hill that led to a more open area. The hunter guided her carefully up the slope, helping her when she stumbled. She leaned on him, relying on his strength, and he spoke softly, reassuring her that they were making progress. The sun reflected off the snow, making the forest sparkle. The beauty of the winter landscape brought a quiet sense of hope at the top of the hill. The hunter spotted smoke in the distance. It was a sign of human presence, a small cabin or settlement where they could find help. He encouraged the woman, telling her they were close to safety. She responded with a small smile, her trust and relief evident. The hunter felt a surge of determination to get her there safely. They descended the hill carefully, the snow slippery and uneven. The hunter supported the woman, helping her navigate the treacherous path. The forest around them seemed less intimidating now, and the sounds of birds and running water added a sense of life and movement. The journey had been long, but they were nearing their goal as they approached the source of the smoke. The hunter could see a small cabin nestled among the trees. The warmth from the chimney indicated that someone was inside. He guided the woman toward it, speaking softly to reassure her. She followed closely, her trust in him complete. The sight of the cabin brought hope and comfort. They reached the cabin and knocked gently. A figure appeared at the door, surprised to see them. The hunter explained the situation briefly, and the person immediately invited them inside. The woman stepped in cautiously, her eyes wide with relief. The warmth of the cabin was immediate. She could feel the cold from the forest melting away. The hunter and the woman sat by the fire inside the cabin. The woman slowly removed the wet clothing she had been wearing, and the hunter provided dry blankets and warm clothes. She sipped hot water and small food provided by the people in the cabin. Her strength returned gradually. She began to relax for the first time since being found. The hunter stayed by her side, keeping her company and ensuring she was comfortable. He listened as she spoke more about her journey, filling in details of how she had become lost and the challenges she had faced. The shared story helped both of them understand the struggle they had endured. The connection between them had grown deep through the shared hardship. The people in the cabin helped them rest and recover. The woman expressed gratitude, and the hunter felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing he had brought her to safety. The bond formed through their journey was strong, built on trust, care, and shared survival. The forest outside remained harsh, but inside the cabin, warmth and comfort allowed them to recover fully. As the day went on, the woman began to regain her confidence. She could move more freely, speak more clearly, and interact with others in the cabin. The hunter watched her, proud of her progress. The days in the forest had been difficult, but they had forged a bond that would not be forgotten. The struggle had strengthened both of them. The hunter thought about the journey they had taken. The snow, the wind, and the cold had tested them, but they had survived together. The trust they had built was powerful, and he realized that human connection was one of the strongest tools in the face of danger. The experience had changed them both, leaving a lasting impression by evening. The woman was able to stand and move without assistance. She walked to the window and looked out at the forest, remembering the journey she had taken and the man who had guided her. The hunter stood nearby, quietly observing her. They did not need many words. The bond between them was understood through gestures and shared experience. The people in the cabin provided a meal and a place to rest. The woman ate slowly, savoring the warmth and nourishment. The hunter sat beside her, sharing the meal quietly. The experience of survival had brought a quiet sense of appreciation for small comforts, and both of them felt a deep connection to life and each other. Night fell over the cabin, and the forest outside was quiet and cold. Inside, the warmth of the fire and the presence of others created a sense of safety. The woman leaned against the hunter, showing gratitude and trust. He stayed alert, reflecting on the journey and the strength it had taken to reach this moment. The night passed peacefully, and the woman slept soundly for the first time in days. The hunter stayed nearby, watching the fire in the forest outside. He thought about how fragile life could be and how important it was to act with care and attention. The experience had been a reminder of human resilience and the power of trust and support. Morning came, and the woman was fully rested. She spoke more freely now, telling stories of her journey and expressing gratitude to the hunter and the people who had helped them. The hunter listened quietly, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. They had survived the cold and found safety. The bond between them remained strong. They spent the day in the cabin, preparing for the journey back to her home or tribe. The woman packed her belongings, and the hunter helped her organize what was needed. The preparation was careful and deliberate, ensuring that they could travel safely and comfortably. The bond between them gave both confidence in the path ahead as they left the cabin. The forest looked different under the bright sunlight. The snow sparkled, and the wind was gentler. The hunter guided the woman along the path, supporting her when necessary. She walked more confidently now, her trust in him complete. The forest was still challenging, but they had learned to face it together. They moved steadily, following the path through the trees. The woman spoke more, asking questions and sharing thoughts. The hunter responded patiently, guiding her and offering reassurance. The journey was no longer solely about survival. It was about connection, trust, and mutual support. The experience had changed them both in a deep and meaningful way. As they reached the edge of the forest, signs of civilization appeared in the distance. The woman recognized familiar landmarks and smiled quietly. The hunter continued to guide her carefully, ensuring she reached safety without incident. The bond they had formed was unspoken but strong, built on days of struggle, care, and shared survival. When they reached the first settlement, the woman paused to take in the sight. She turned to the hunter, expressing gratitude with a deep and sincere gesture. He nodded quietly, feeling the satisfaction of a task completed and a life saved. The journey had been difficult, but it had created a bond that would last beyond the forest. The hunter watched as she reunited with her people, feeling a sense of closure and relief. He had guided her through the cold, the snow, and the forest, and they had survived together. The lessons of trust, care, and human connection were clear. The experience had been challenging, but it had also been a reminder of the power of compassion and determination. The woman looked back once, a silent thank you in her eyes. The hunter nodded and turned back toward the forest, reflecting on the journey and the bond they had formed. The forest was still cold and vast, but they had faced it together and survived. The experience left a lasting impression, a reminder of human resilience, trust, and the strength found in helping one another as the sun set. The hunter walked slowly through the forest, thinking about the journey and the woman he had saved. The snow glowed softly in the fading light, and the forest was quiet. The bond formed through survival, care, and trust would remain with them both. The journey had ended, but the memory of it would last forever, a testament to courage, compassion, and the power of human connection. The morning was calm, and the forest seemed peaceful under a light layer of fresh snow. The hunter walked slowly through the trees, thinking about the journey he and the woman had taken. The events of the past days weighed on him, but he also felt a quiet satisfaction knowing they had survived together. He remembered her trust and the bond they had formed in the cold wilderness. He decided to take a small detour to a part of the forest, as he knew well. The path was lined with tall pine trees, their branches heavy with snow. He breathed deeply, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs. The forest was beautiful in the morning light, and he felt a sense of connection with it. Each step reminded him of the challenges they had faced and the resilience they had shown as he moved along. He recalled the moments when the woman had struggled and how he had helped her. He remembered her small gestures of trust and the quiet way she had leaned on him. Those moments had created a bond that went beyond words. The memory brought a warmth to him. Despite the cold around, he came to a frozen creek, the water flowing gently beneath the ice. He paused and listened to the sound, remembering how they had crossed it together. The memory of supporting her, guiding her carefully over the ice, and seeing her relief on the other side made him smile quietly to himself. The forest seemed alive with the echoes of their journey further along. He noticed the tracks they had made together days before. The snow had shifted and covered most of them, but small impressions remained. He followed them briefly, recalling the effort it had taken to move through deep snow and the small victories along the way. The memory of their shared struggle reminded him of the human spirit and the power of trust. He found a small clearing where the sun shone brightly. The light melted the frost slightly and created small patches of warmth. The hunter decided to rest for a while, sitting on a fallen log and looking around. The forest was quiet except for the occasional rustle of a bird or the soft cracking of branches. He thought about the woman and wondered how she was doing now that she had returned to safety as he rested. He reflected on the lessons he had learned from their journey. The importance of patience, The power of compassion and the strength found in helping another human being were clear to him. The memory of her face, her trust, and her determination had left a lasting impression. The forest had tested them both, but it had also shown them resilience. He decided to explore a bit further, following a narrow path through the trees. The snow was soft beneath his boots, and the sunlight created sparkling patterns on the ground. He moved slowly, aware of every step, enjoying the quiet solitude of the forest. The journey had been difficult, but the calm of the morning brought peace to him along the path. He found a small group of deer grazing near a clearing. They looked up at him briefly before returning to their search for food. The sight reminded him of the balance of life in the forest and the small moments of beauty that existed even in harsh conditions. He watched quietly, appreciating the peaceful moment. He continued along the path, thinking about how the forest could be both dangerous and nurturing. It had tested him and the woman, but it had also provided the means to survive. Every tree, every frozen stream, and every patch of snow held memories of their struggle and the trust they had built. The experience had changed him. Leaving a deep respect for life and resilience, he came to a small hill overlooking a frozen lake. The sunlight reflected off the ice, creating a shimmering surface. He paused, taking in the view and remembering the moments of struggle and triumph. The memory of helping her, seeing her regain strength, and guiding her to safety was vivid. The bond they had formed seemed to resonate with the quiet beauty of the forest. He walked down toward the edge of the lake, careful of the ice beneath his feet. The frozen water reminded him of the cold nights and the careful steps they had taken together. The memory of keeping her warm by the fire, sharing food and water, and speaking softly to reassure her came to mind. The experience had been challenging but deeply meaningful. He found a fallen tree near the lake and sat on it, resting for a moment. The forest around him was still, and he could hear the soft sound of the wind moving through the trees. He thought about the woman and the way she had looked at him with trust and gratitude. The memory of her small gestures, her growing strength, and her courage was powerful and humbling as he rested. He decided to continue exploring the forest, following a small path that led toward higher ground. The snow was soft but deep, and he moved carefully, mindful of each step. The sunlight created small shadows and patterns on the snow, making the forest feel alive and dynamic. He felt a sense of connection with the land and the memories it held. He reached a small ridge that provided a view of the surrounding forest. The trees stretched endlessly, and the snow-covered ground reflected the sunlight. He paused, taking a deep breath and feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. The journey with the woman had tested him physically and emotionally, but it had also left a lasting impression of resilience and human connection. He continued along the ridge, moving carefully and taking in the beauty of the forest. The quiet solitude allowed him to reflect on the moments of struggle and triumph, and the way trust and care had guided their journey. Each step reminded him of the shared experience and the bond formed through the challenges they had faced. He found a small clearing with a few rocks and a patch of sunlight. He sat down, taking a moment to rest and think. The memory of helping her, guiding her, and seeing her regain strength filled him with quiet satisfaction. The forest, though harsh and cold, had provided the space for growth, trust, and connection. He walked along a narrow path leading deeper into the forest, following the contours of the land. The snow was uneven and required careful attention. He thought about how the experience had changed him, teaching patience, empathy, and the importance of human connection. The memory of the woman and their journey together remained vivid as he moved through the trees. He noticed small signs of life, including birds and small animals. The presence of life reminded him of resilience and the continuity of the natural world. He thought about the ways in which the forest had challenged them, but also provided the means to survive and connect.